Good evening, everybody. A pleasure to be back here again. Sometimes hard to believe that a month has flown past since our last guest, and we're really excited to have our guest Barbara Dyskant joining us tonight because Barbara is another one of our homegrown solo arts heel performers, and we haven't had one for a while. I don't know, maybe the last one was Elliot Kerman. I'm not sure. She's homegrown because Barbara and her late husband, Barry, came to us through our prostate cancer group. It must be about a year and a half to 2 years ago, probably more, 2 years ago. And Barbara also joined our caregivers group. And through that, we learned that Barbara played the piano and that other members of her family, as she'll tell you, and you may have been listening to, play other instruments. And so it occurred to us that Barbara would be a very good candidate for Solo Arts Hill. So it's my pleasure tonight to welcome my friend, Barbara Dyskant. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, Rick. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you in that beautiful blue dress. That's
Oh,
lovely. And I just learned, for those of you who are looking in right now, that that is a full grand piano that is to the side of Barbara's left hand, a full-size grand piano, and we're going to hear it later on tonight, very soon, actually, very, very soon. So, Barbara, I was doing a little research into the name Dyskant,
hmm
and I found two meanings, and those meanings are perfect for tonight. Now, it's a
oh,
Polish name, I know,
you're right.
and I found one meaning that said music, and I
Hmm.
found another meaning that said discourse.
Okay.
And so, if we're not going to have music and discourse tonight, both you and I are in the wrong place, don't you think?
I agree completely. And yes, my father came from Poland when he was 3 years old. So you got the right information.
All right. Okay. Um, so uh, I want to talk a little bit first about your background. Um, when did you start playing music? And how, when did you discover this talent to write songs and compose and do all of this?
I don't know. I've been writing songs and had melodies going through my head ever since I can remember. And often they were related to specific circumstances, like I'd see something and I'd hear a melody in my head that represented what I saw. And I started just writing songs that would be about everything that was going on. If it was happy, if it was unhappy, it would get a song. Or people who were around me, whether tended to get songs, which is a caveat. If you're going to be around a music composer, you'll get songs written about you.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
just always loved music. I still remember when my mother bought our first piano. I went out into the hall. She made me wait a while because she didn't think I should start too young. And when the piano arrived, I still remember running out into the hall and shrieking. And that was it. I got a teacher. She got me a teacher, and they sent me on up. They figured this woman's got either gumption or talent, so they sent me on to music school. And that was what I did, and that was what I was in love with.
And where were you doing this?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a teacher. One of my teacher was a student at Juilliard, and so he had me audition for the Juilliard preparatory division.
Wow.
And I got in, and my mother used to drive me through Harlem, which at that time she was a little worried, but she did anyway. And we used to go, and every Saturday, and that was the joy of my life, getting to be with people like me. I was also loved academics. I don't know whether I'd mentioned it, that I also just love the sciences, and I love writing, and I call myself a recreational scientist because I studied a lot of it, even though I never made it a profession. And yet the music was just central to me. And it's like other people dance, and I'd love to be a good dancer, which I'm not. So, we each have our talent, and I think when we find what we love, we need to go with it. I know I got talked out of it for a while, and I was happy to rehabilitate as a musician after that.
Wow. So what did you study? Was it economics? I
Yeah,
have it
I
say in
did
my back of
graduate
my
work.
mind, I think it's economics.
Yes, I did. I did graduate work in economics, and it was an interesting subject. And I worked with a firm doing international. It was international development of all things that I was fascinated with, because I always wanted to do things for people. That was
Hmm?
one of my other drives, that is to like to, if I know something, help people. And after I graduated, I realized that I did want to do music after all, but it was fun being in that. I even had a job on Wall Street for a while, and it was quite interesting. It was like horse races. It was before computers, and it was
It
like going to
boggles the
horse
mind,
race.
I
The
have
bell
to
would ring,
say.
and they'd be running around just like in the funny movies.
What years were you in Wall Street? Do you
Let me
remember what
think.
years were you in Wall Street?
Let me think. 19. I'm trying to think. Around 19, the early somewhere in the 70s. It was before computers took over. So when the bell rang, it was like people were off. I mean, they were bumping into each other. I wasn't on the floor. I was in one of the offices. I wasn't a broker. And
Well, the reason I asked you is because I was on Wall Street too.
wait,
I
what
was
year
at
were you there?
That's why I'm asking. You see, I was there from 75 to 78. I used to get on the train from the Upper West Side and go down to Chase Manhattan Plaza. And I was working in Chase Manhattan Plaza from 1975 to 1978.
That is strange, because that was about the same time I was there.
And you didn't look me up,
No, well,
you
you,
know?
you didn't. You didn't notice me either among all those crowds of
Oh, you
strangers.
don't know that. You don't know
Maybe you did.
that. Maybe I did. You're right. Maybe I did. So, um,
That's
it's
amazing.
interesting. So, no, it's interesting to me that, and I am, the closest thing in academic terms to the way I identify myself is as an economist, and it's very interesting that in later years you've taken this training, this academic training that you've had, and the music training that you've had, and you've combined these into advocacy and caregiving. And was there any before you had kids, when you were growing up, was there any element of caregiving in your background?
Um, no, there wasn't. I was sort of a do-gooder, if you will. I joined, groups that helped the environment or whatever else that was around
Mhm.
me. But the first time I ever really had to be a serious caregiver was when Nadine, at 17, my daughter, was diagnosed with leukemia very suddenly. And I had briefly been a caregiver, sort of a little bit before. No, that was afterward, when Barry broke his hip on the ice. But that was sort of, almost comic. It was like we knew it would be over with. He was laid up on crutches, but we knew he'd be off them.
Right.
Whereas with leukemia, I thought she had anemia, and I don't know why I even gave her a blood test. She looked okay, if not a little bit pale. And we got a call. I call it the "do not go to jail, do not pass go" card. They said take her in immediately. And I brought her in, and she was in they whisked her right up to transfusions as soon as we got there, practically. So I became a caregiver. You do what you have to do, and that was, hitting the books and finding out about every single treatment she had. I had studied chemistry and biology, and I sort of went and I told the hospital, don't give me the watered down version. I want the real stuff. And so they sent me reams of it. And during my ho free time, which wasn't much, I looked and tried to figure out what was going on and deal with the doctors, and it was full time. And I have to say, she was a good patient, probably better than I would have been. She didn't complain that she got it. Once I said, why did you get this? And she said, are you telling me you want me to give this to somebody else instead of me? And I was like floored.
Mm.
And that quieted me down. And so I guess my career as a caregiver started with my daughter. And when Barry got sick, she joined our care team and she went to the doctor appointments, and she told one of the doctors that she had trained me to be an advocate.
Well, we're going to come back to Nadine for sure, but I have a question about Nadine. I'll tell you something very interesting about Nadine that I just noticed, because I went to the website for Concordance Music, and the first picture I saw on the homepage, she looks like Barry, God rest his soul. And then I look at her when she was small, and she looks just like you. So I don't know whether she looks like Barry or she looks like you, but I see the two of you. I definitely see the two of you. We know who her
Oh,
parents
yes,
are.
there's no question about that. And she also, we sort of joked that she got both of our good points. And if we'd had one that, if Barry and I sort of joked that she's a wonderful mechanic. She can take an engine apart and put it
Oh my
together
goodness.
and all that. He trained her well, but she's talented at it too. The car broke down and she said, oh, it's the alternator. I'll put a new one in just like that. And at the same time, I was hopeless, but at the same time, she also has music, and it's like she got all of our goods. And Barry and I used to joke that if we had another child who got all of our bad points, it would be a problem. But she seems to
So
have gotten them both.
how old was she when you realized that she had your musical talents, or the Dyskant musical talents, and what did she start playing, and how did you cultivate that?
Well, her flute, she fell in love with the flute, and she was too little to play the flute because you have to reach your arms out like that. So we got her a little violin so that she could start. And she said, I love the violin, but what I want to play is the flute, very
Right.
resolutely, as the daughters can be. I call it the don't argue with me voice. And so we managed to find her one with a curved head that she could play. And then when we moved here, her teacher noticed obviously and said, well, you should take her to Eastman. Well, Eastman was 100 miles each way. But I also remembered how, that I had been encouraged.
Oh,
And,
Julia,
we,
yeah.
we played CDs and we played games in the car. And darn it, we went to Eastman every week and we stayed overnight at a friend's house. So she had 2 days. And her theory teacher noticed. And one day I saw her playing something on the piano. And I said, where did you learn that? She said, I just made it up. And I went, okay, and called the composition teacher at Eastman and said, I know I'm her mother, but I really think you should have a listen to her. So
Wow.
she,
I think we need to share with the audience, because they don't know where you live. You live in Western New York State,
yes.
and Eastman is at the University of Rochester. And I first found out about Eastman, I think, when I listened to Chuck Mangione, when I was a student at University of Chicago, and I remember going to the North Side to a jazz club to hear Chuck Mangione, because at the
Ooh.
time he and his brother, I think, were professors at Eastman, or they taught at Eastman. And yes,
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember that. I did write words to one of Chuck Mangione's songs, though. A lot of the things I like to do is to take jazz standards and write words to them. So I really loved listening to him. But I live very rurally. We live, well, I still say we. I mean, there it is in terms of my husband's gone a year and a half more. And I still sometimes say we. I think we, and I know that. But at any rate, I live about 100 miles, 65 miles from the nearest bookstore. But it's beautiful out here. It's affordable, and we have a really nice community of people here. People take
well,
care of each other, and we even
well,
have a good symphony orchestra and a good, we have a couple
we'll
of things
we'll
you wouldn't
talk about that
expect.
symphony orchestra, but we have to. Everybody's been waiting to hear you play, and I think it's time that you introduce your first two songs, and let's listen.
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to hear that we have Wall Street in common.
There
We've
you
got to
go.
share some
Who knew?
stories. Okay. Um, as I think I mentioned, a lot of my writing songs is about things in my life, and having a baby was an absolutely wonderful thing in my life. And also, it has its moments. And this is a song called The Baby Blues that I wrote about one of the moments. I got the baby blues from my head down to my grown-up shoes. And it wouldn't be worth it for anybody else but you. 'Cause you work me hard by day, rob me of rest at night, but when I hold you in my arms, baby, it feels so right. And it wouldn't be worth it for anybody else but you. Sometimes I think I'd got some time alone. I might go and try and call a girlfriend on the phone. You come up out of nowhere, you kick and shriek and whine. I drop the phone, I don't know when I'll ever get some time. I wash your face and wash your diapers, clean your messes off the floor. Sometimes I feel like I can't stand it anymore. And it wouldn't be worth it for anybody else but you. Sometimes I think I got some time alone. I might go and try and do something on my own. You come up out of nowhere, you shriek till you turn blue. I feel I never, never, never get a break from you. 'Cause you work me hard by day, rob me of rest at night, but your sweet, sweet bow, baby, is so out of sight. And it wouldn't be worth it for anybody else but you. No, 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 for anybody else but you. No, 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 for anybody else but you. Baby, you're the one. Oh, there's nobody else but you. And that's one way music helps me feel better during stress. This next song I would like to dedicate to 1330 Cancer Connect, which used to be TLC, for the absolutely wonderful, wonderful work that they do serving teens and young adults with cancer and also their families. And I was one of the people served by it. This song is a true story about two teens and two mothers. The second teen is my daughter, Nadine. The song is called Make It Better. Nadine, whoops, I'm starting over. Melissa was a happy girl, loving and loved too, with big brown eyes, off to college and her dreams. And then one day leukemia came. She fought with power and grace, strong as a willow tree, embraced by family, living life fully till 2 years later. it took her away. She often felt alone. There were playgroups for children, circles for women, but she was neither one of these. And it's hard enough just to be a teen. She wrote long letters, made gifts for her friends, traveled with her family, took class to the end. And just 3 days before she died, while sitting by her mother's side, she said, "Mother, if you've learned anything from this, take what you've learned and do something to make it better. Oh, Mother, if you've learned anything from this, take what you've learned and do something to make it better." Lauren walked in tears of grief. She planted a garden, roses and lilacs, geraniums, lilies and daisies. And then one day a vision came, a place where teens could belong, teens living with cancer, to be together, to share the journey wherever it led, and never be alone. It started small in her living room, earnest conversations, a splash in the pool, and time went on and word had grown. TLC moved into a place of its own, with outings and gatherings, traveling about, a friendly place to just hang out, a voice in this community. This living, loving legacy. Oh, Mother, if you've learned anything from this, take what you've learned and do something to make it better. Nadine was a happy girl, loving and loved too, with fawn-colored hair, playing her flute like moonbeams. And then one day leukemia came. In the midst of the shock and the pain, there came an invitation to Melissa's garden, greeted with hugs and exuberance. She knew she was one of them. She almost didn't go, it might be too gloomy. Their laughter won her over, and it was perfect. They shared the joys, they shared the pain. They saw her off to college just the other day. Her picture hangs upon their wall, with survivors, some still fighting, and those who've passed on, for the gift of love and lifelong friends. Our gratitude to TLC will never end, and here I stand, though I don't know yet what it will be. I'm gonna take what I've learned and do something to make it better. Standing in the light of Melissa and Lauren's love, I'm gonna take what I've learned and do something to make it better. Imagine the world if no matter what places we have been, we all take what we've learned and do something to make it better. What a wonderful world if no matter what places we have been, we all take what we've learned and do something to make it better. Oh, Mother, if you've learned anything from this, take what you've learned and do something to make it better.
Beautiful, beautiful, great Wonderful, wonderful. And we've even got people in the chat telling us how much they're enjoying listening to that. So,
Oh, thank
you know,
you.
there's another point of commonality that I didn't think of before. And I suspect that this organization might have preceded Nadine's cancer, and we'll come to this. But what year was Nadine diagnosed with leukemia?
2009, May 26th, 2009.
No, it didn't. Teen Cancer, maybe it did. Teen Cancer America. Is that a, are you familiar with Teen Cancer?
No,
No.
since TLC, which now became 1330 because now it's young adults as well, up to 30. And they were right in Rochester, and
Ah,
we found out about them. And, and then I met Lauren, who's become a good friend. And probably some of the 1330 family I think, is probably listening tonight as well.
I hope
And
so. I
because
hope
it's a
so.
family, once you're part of it, whether cure or not, you're always part of it.
Well, we get that at ANCAN, believe me. But
And
I mentioned Teen Cancer America um, because the glue that keeps us all together, my right hand person, Alexa, is very close with that organization.
really, wow.
And Teen Cancer America comes out of Great Britain, and it was originally started by the Who, by Peter Daltrey and Pete Townsend. And
Wow.
and I learned about it because literally lifelong friend is married to the Who's graphic designer. He's been
Whoa.
their graphic designer for 45 years, Richard Evans. And when I was visiting and staying with them, and I told him what I did, Richard said, "Oh, you've got to get in touch with so and so at Teen Cancer because they've just decided to open in the United States, and Teen Cancer America now is a similar organization to TLC." So I thought I would just mention that. What I really wanted to ask you is, um, you mentioned at the end of your last set that music helps you feel better, and what is your role? What is the role of the arts for you in terms of healing and being a caregiver?
Well, the first time I started realizing it was by accident, I was at my mother-in-law had a meningioma, which is a tumor of the outer membrane of the brain, and when it was
Right,
removed, the results were pretty much like having a stroke, and she couldn't talk, and she had a lot of other issues. And I came in to visit her, and she was a Sweet Adelide. She loved the Sweet Adelides and used to sing with them. So I just sort of, to cheer her up, I went, "Button up your overcoat when the wind is free. Take good care of yourself." And she chimed in, "You belong to me," and
there
started
you
singing the
go.
song and perked up. I mean, she was just so happy. And she remembered the song, and it brought her joy. It brought things back to
Right,
her. And
right.
that was my first inkling of it. And when Nadine was sick, I played for her. I was very honored. She'd asked me to play music for her. We were very lucky in a sense. When she was in the first hospitalized, the social worker asked me if there was anything he could do for me. And I said, "Is there a piano in the hospital I could play?" And he said, "I've never been asked that, but I'll see." He was one of those people who, if it could be done, he'd do it, and if he couldn't be done, he'd still do it. And he came back and said, "You've got the chapel piano 24/7." And I was there about 24/7. So
Wow.
I ran, I went, and it was like when somebody was with her in the room and I could do it, it was like I just crept down those stairs with almost feeling like I was sneaking, and went in there and just played and played, and it was just really helped me. And then after she got out of the hospital, we got to stay at an apartment at the top of a friend's house who ran a music school. So we stayed at the music school for a month. And Nadine would ask me to play piano for her. And I'd play it for her. Even if she was sick, she wanted me to play. So I played. And I'm an improviser. And I look at people and I sort of think about them, and then I see what my hands do at the piano. I don't quite do that with my voice, but I'll just play something. I was improvising, by the way, when I did the piano solo today on Make It Better. It was an improvised solo. I always leave it open to improvising. I don't have anything that I just put there. It's like how I feel. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at this, what's coming out of my hands. And so you got to hear some improvisation already.
Wow. Okay.
And she would ask me, I was so honored. I said, would you like me to play Bach or Mozart? And she said, no, I want you to improvise. I want you to play your things. And so I'd play them for her, and it worked. And then when Barry was sick, he also wanted me to play for him, and I took it as a great honor. I mean, the situation with Barry was very different. Although Nadine had leukemia, she had a reasonably good chance that she was going to survive. Whereas Barry's situation, the chance was really about zero. We didn't know how much time we had, but we knew what it was. And he felt very well for most of it, which was a gift and then toward the end he was getting weaker, and I'd play for him. And he started to dance while I was playing. He literally got up and he was dancing. And I was improvising and looking at him and playing it just for him. And he was dancing. And that just, just the power of that kind of thing is just amazing. And even in his hospital room, he wanted me to play. Nadine would say, music or talk or music, and he'd say music. And so it just meant a lot to him, and I can't help but think that it did something for him more than just enjoy. It just brought something for him.
Right.
So I feel like it was a good experience.
Was Nadine's own music for herself a factor in her healing? Did she play for herself? Did it play a role? Did music play a role for her from herself?
Well, I think so. Because I don't want to speak for her or I'm going to get in big trouble.
Okay.
But however, that said, she played me after she was out of the hospital, a while I heard her playing this absolutely beautiful, very melancholy waltz. And I said, where did you write it? And I think she said she wrote it in the hospital.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
People came and had jam sessions in her room. Her room in the hospital sort of turned into a party room. People came in and jammed with her, and her flute teacher brought the flute choir for a rehearsal. So she played music in the hospital in the middle of chemo. They went out to the lounge, and the way she put it, they serenaded the fish in the tanks.
Oh, my goodness. Where was she treated?
Strong Memorial Hospital, URMC. And then
That's University of Rochester?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when she was in chemo, there was a concerto competition, and she decided to enter it with a friend, and they won. So she was in full chemo and playing in front of Eastman Theater, in front of whatever. And
wow.
At chemo, they were wonderful to her. They said, look, if you're feeling too sick, we'll give you another day, because you know how chemo cycles are. So if she was having a really bad day, they could put it. So I guess it did do something, because she kept it up. And then she wrote this absolutely exquisite waltz in the hospital, which she never even told me about until she got out. So again, without speaking for Nadine as a mother's guest, I would say yes, but I can't, as I said, I don't want to get into trouble.
So I don't think that waltz is going to be part of your next set. But why don't you tell us what is part of your next set, and we'll listen to it.
Well, thank you. Well, the first tune, these tunes are actually almost diametric opposites of each other. Oh, and the first one is a song that I wrote about several days after Barry was diagnosed with terminal advanced prostate cancer. And we didn't know how much time he had left, but we did know that it was going to get him. And it was for us to get him the best treatment we could get him, and also to make the most of whatever time we had left together. Those were both the goals of that. It turned out he only had 11 months. And, we did what we could, and the wonderful doctors did what we could, and Rick gave us some good navigation help as well. The second tune I'll introduce afterwards. It's about finding ourselves, called Finding Ourselves with the Music, about how music and dancing are just wonderful things no matter what we're going through. So with that, I'm going to do this one. The song, by the way, is called Loving You Now. Come on. You promised when he was ready, you'd teach our grandson to drive. Now I'm wondering if in 6 months you'll be alive. We looked forward to years together in our country home. Now I'm wondering how I'll face the years alone. And so I'm loving you now, loving you here today. Wishing right now, wishing that you could stay in love with me forever, but forever has gone away. Said, watch me now while I put the storm windows on. You're gonna have to do it when I'm gone. You always want the best for me, this I know. But how can I hear you when my heart's crying, please don't go. And so I'm loving you now, loving you here today. Wishing right now, wishing that you could stay in love with me forever, but forever has gone away. I stare at the handsome sight of you, the same warm smile I always knew, strong and sleek as you've always been. Who'd believe there's a monster devouring you from within? The mountains are still, the trees all look the same. None of them seem to notice the world has changed. How can I pull it together, go on somehow, when we can't look to the future, we just have now? And so I'm loving you now, loving you here today. Wishing right now, wishing that you could stay in love with me forever, but forever has gone away. We gotta make each day forever, forget each moment never. Make each day forever, forever. now today. It was something that, that I've learned that you don't get over grief, you don't move away, but you move forward. It's with you, and yet you move forward. That's sort of my takeaway from this. At least what my experience is. I know everybody experiences it differently, which is true too. This next song is completely different. I'm thinking about Bob Marley's statement in his song, "Forget your weakness and dance, forget your sickness and dance." And I love dance music, and dance is, as I've mentioned before, is a wonderful thing. And while we're dealing with everything else, to keep ourselves healthy, and healthy means being vibrant. And I'm hoping, this song is called "Find Ourselves with the Music." And I'm hoping maybe some of you out there might dance a little while I play this, even if you just wave your hands. Sometimes I've been feeling sad, so much in the world is going bad. Sometimes it feels like hope is gone, could lose the will to carry on. Time to find ourselves with the music. Find ourselves with the music now. Find ourselves with the music, and it keeps us moving on. People in the world know the power of song. When they dance and sing along, they sing when they get their hard work done. Power to the people, that's everyone. They find themselves with the music. Find themselves with the music now. Find ourselves with the music, and it keeps us moving on. We shall not be moved, we shall overcome. Joy to the world, here comes the sun. Woke up this morning, feel real fine. This little night is gonna shine, shine, shine. We'll find ourselves with the music. Sing along with the music. Get up and dance with the music, and it keeps us moving on. We shall not be moved, we shall overcome. Joy to the world, here comes the sun. Woke up this morning, feel real fine. This little light is gonna shine, shine, shine. Nos hallaremos con la música. Cantamos con la música. Bailamos con la música. A todo el mundo le gusta. Find ourselves with the music. Find ourselves with the music now. Find ourselves with the music, and it keeps us moving on. That's right. Find ourselves with the music. Find ourselves with the music. Find ourselves with the music, and it keeps us moving on.
Wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
I'm getting very great, good feedback from the audience too. But something occurred to me, Barbara. H- how do you write these? How do you keep a record of these songs? I mean, you compose a song. Do you write it down? Do you write the notes down? Do you just write the lyrics down? How, how do you? I mean, something that you wrote 20 years ago, you can probably still sing it. How do you? Is it just in your head?
Well, it depends on where I am. I have to admit, my cell phone voice memo is a wonderful thing. And if
All
a song
right.
occurs to me, because I've discovered that the more I think I'm going to remember something I write because it's so simple, the less I will remember it. I think I will. So most of the time, my best friend, if I'm driving, I just talk into the voice memo and sing what I'm either sing the melody or something. Other times I'm sitting at the piano, and sometimes songs just come to me when I'm sitting at the piano. I'll improvise. So I like every night I like to do an improvisation just because I enjoy them. And I keep a tape recorder near me so that if I can record it, and if something, you know, I'll play it back later. And if it's something I want to keep, but no, I don't always remember them. I have to. And what's interesting is when I write a song about a thing, usually the melody and the song words come together for a while, and then the melody gets finished and then the words come afterward. That's just the way I write. It's like I'll go, you know, "Hey, times I've been feeling sad so much of the word," and then the rest of the melody comes, and then I sort of have to fill in the words sometimes. Other people I know write their lyrics first. That's usually not me. I don't know
No,
if
I
that
mean,
helps explain it.
no, no, well, it does, and it raises two issues from the audience. The first is that that Pat is listening, who is one of our moderators from our caregivers group. And by the way, any caregiver listening, we welcome you to our caregivers group. And she says that the "Loving You Now" uh, really hits home to her. So
Mhm.
that's what made me think, well, how could, is it recorded anywhere? Do you have recordings of your own songs?
I am planning on doing my very first CD, and I'm
Wow,
really
okay.
excited about it. My first solo CD. I recorded a
Okay.
CD with Nadine, and it's partly by popular request. I'm going to be recording a CD, and I will undoubtedly have that on it. And I'm really excited. It's an exciting project for me. That's why I'm hoping to develop a mailing list or something so I can let people know when I actually get it done. It's been procrastinated. I've wanted to do this for the last 25 years, and I even wrote a song about all the excuses that I've made to not do it. So help me. I put all of my excuses in a song, rhymed them, and they're going to go into the song as to why I haven't done this. And I
Oh
figured,
my goodness. Well, you have certainly at least one of those CDs sold in Omaha, Nebraska. I just want to
oh,
tell you. That's
oh,
that is for sure. And somebody else also asks a question, which is a very good question, and really um, focuses in on the point that you just made, which is that how how would you um, advise somebody who has these feelings and doesn't really know how to get them down on paper? How would you advise them to start writing songs, writing lyrics?
Well, everybody has their own way, but I know I've worked with other people to help them get their music out. I haven't done it professionally, but people have asked, and sometimes depending where people are, there are often actually groups that help people do that, peer usually groups. But I would just say, if they have it, to keep a notebook with them, to get a recorder and talk their songs, because I know there's a lot of scariness. It's like just get their voice memo out, and even if it's just gibberish, put something into it. That's the way writers do. Writers do also. It's like get something easy that's easy to do, that's non-stressful. And, as I said, for me, the voice memo recorder is perfect because it's like you don't have to feel like, oh, how grandiose am I being? Am I an egotist? You put it into your thing and do it if it's your heart. And the other thing, I'll just give you the words of the song I wrote about procrastination. And it's like, what would it take to follow my heart? How will I feel in 20 years if I never start? And that song helped me get going, and to just, not worry about if it's any good. That's the other thing I tell them. Don't worry. Whether it's good or not is not the issue. The issue is good is in the eyes of the beholder. If it's out of you, it's good. If it's from your heart, it's good. And I don't know if that helps at all, but, all I could say is if you've got anything in you, writing, music, please go with it. Please go with it. It'll make me happy to know I've helped encouraged somebody.
Well, I mean, you are inspiring people tonight, I can tell you. Let's talk a little bit about your experience with Barry. And one of the things that I recognized, and I've seen it in other situations, is that you were largely Barry's advocate. We saw you in our advanced prostate cancer groups a lot more often than we saw Barry. Even before he was sick.
I know. He just wouldn't go. He said, you go.
So
I would have
talk to me
liked him to
about
go.
that. So as a
Really wanted him
caregiver,
to.
why don't you talk to me about that as a caregiver?
Excuse me?
Talk to me about that as a caregiver, that you went rather than Barry, and he wanted you to go rather than him.
Well, it was his right to do what he wanted to do. I didn't push him, I offered it. And at the same time, it was his right. Strangely enough, the one he was thinking of going to before he got sicker, I talked to him about the men only groups, the ones that didn't, the other ones. And he was actually thinking of checking out the Reluctant Brotherhood group that you had.
Yeah.
And he passed before that happened. But he thought about it. As a caregiver, I felt a little funny in the group, but at the same time, I guess since it was open to caregivers and there was a lot of information, I thought I went, and I had more scientific knowledge, I think, than he did about that. He was a mechanical engineer. Believe me, he knew what he knew. But this wasn't his thing. He went once, and he was so active at everything else. He was climbing up and down. He was involved with testing the effluent from landfills for radiation. And he was out there climbing in the middle of chemo. He was out there climbing snowy hills with a Geiger counter and doing, a lot of things that he felt were important for the environment. So he sort of felt he did his bit. And I would have liked him to go with me personally. I would have wanted him to go. And at the same time, it's like, that was my role, to help do what he wanted me to do, in that. And to keep offering it to him so he could always feel he could jump in at any time. But he was considering one of the all men's groups.
Speaking freely groups, which came out of what we did with the Reluctant Brotherhood. Yeah. But did you take information from the group back to him, or did you advocate for him on the basis of the information? Did you share our information with him?
I shared what I learned, and he took it in. A lot of, he wanted, some of the treatments, he was interested in seeing how other people were doing on different treatments. So
Mm.
he had some decisions to make on,
Mm.
not that any of them worked. Absolutely none of the treatments worked, not a single one. He didn't get any time bought from any of them. Chemo, because of the aggressiveness of his cancer, the consensus of the 5 doctors we went to Sloan Kettering, Johns Hopkins, Cleveland, all over the place, because it was so bad. If it hadn't been like with Nadine, horrible as it was, there was a pretty much a protocol, and as long as it worked, that was fine. I'd have done the same with her if she hadn't responded. And the consensus was he needed to hit it hard. So he did Taxotere right away. And strangely enough, had almost no reaction to it, but unfortunately needed his cancer.
Yeah.
And
A question that's been asked is how you feel the caregiving was different and the response on the part of the patient was different between Nadine and Barry.
well, they were 2 different people. They each, I don't even sure whether it was their, whether one was, clearly Nadine was, the caregiving was different because there was an element of always wanting second and third opinions with Barry because he wasn't responding. So I think that was the main way that the caregiving was different, was having to be continually checking the books to see if there was a new medicine, if there was a clinical trial. He was actually up for a clinical trial with Dr. Tagawa, and with all the COVID, it got put on hold. And very sadly, I got the phone call about a week after he died that they were going to be doing the trial. And I don't know if it would have helped him or not. But again, there was always looking to see, okay, what's been approved today? What's down the pipes? Who has it at what place? Whereas with Nadine, it was more of making her feel good, but we didn't have to do that kind of research because she responded to all the chemo. So I think that was the big difference. Also, she was quite slapstick in some of the way she responded. She played a trick on the doctors at the hospital and had the nurses help her put this IV pole up with blue fluid and those baby dinosaur things, the blow up things that you could do. She had them put in the IV pole. So when the doctors came in for rounds, they'd think that was going into her veins. And she was continually playing that kind of lighthearted prank. She wanted a disco ball in her room. She had music people coming in and jamming and things like that going on. And Barry was more, if I'm going to do things for the world, I've got to do them now. So if anything, he accelerated his work with the Cattaraugus County water protectors, with concerned citizens. And that was where he put his focus in healing.
Of course, one thing with Barry that was very unusual is that he had a very unusual genetic mutation. He had a rare genetic mutation. Right. I mean, it's rare enough. It's most common in lung cancer, his mutation, and it's even rare in only about 1% of lung cancer, and we don't see it a lot anywhere else. And it happened to show up in his case in prostate cancer, which suggested certain treatments that are much more commonly seen in lung cancer. So, I mean, that was a big difference.
It was, and Genentech was very generous with us in giving him, our pharmacist wrote out the recommendation and, explained Barry's situation, and Genentech was very generous about giving him a good supply of the latest ROS treatment. Yep. And we never got to find out if it would work. He took it, but by then it was too late. It was
too late. Yeah, and unfortunately that happens. Well, we're coming towards the end, and I know that there's one more song, and we want to hear the last song. So give us a quick encore before we finish, please.
I'll be happy to. And by the way, I want to thank you, Rick, for instigating me being on this program. It's meant a lot. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And I want to thank you for facilitating those care groups as well. Thank you. I should mention before I do that one other thing. Barry's drive was also to teach Nadine all he knew about mechanics. And he managed to do it. Before he passed, he managed. I just wanted to add that tidbit before I sing the song.
Okay.
This song is, I'm going to end this program with a song about the ultimate of life, meaning birth. And this is a song I wrote when I was 6 months pregnant. And it's called Tap Tap. I get up in the morning and what do I see? A big fat belly and a funny looking me. I think about some fanciful scheme when something comes to change the scene. I feel tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, roll. I'm sharing this body with another soul. It goes tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, slide. A wiggle and a squiggle full of love inside. Watch my navel boogie up and down, ripples on the tummy swirling all around, jerk left, squish right, wobbling everywhere. I wonder what the child is doing in there. They go tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, roll. I'm sharing this body with another soul. It goes tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, slide. A week again, squeakle full of love inside. Walk with a waddle and land with a plop, can get stuck in turnstiles, eating pee a lot. The emotional roller coaster's quite a deal, but it's hard to stop laughing sometimes when I feel that tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, roll. I'm sharing this body with another soul. It goes tap tap, ping ping, clunk clunk, slide. A wiggle and a squiggle full of love inside. Years to come, we're going to share a lot. Joys, loves, and troubles, and who knows what. Lessons to take and lessons to give, but I'll never forget, as long as I live, that tap, tap, ping, ping, clunk, clunk, roll. I'm sharing this body with another soul. It goes tap, tap, ping, ping, clunk, clunk, slide. A wiggle and a squiggle full of love inside. And now I get up in the morning, and what do I see? It's a big, fat, whoops. Tap, tap, ping, ping, clunk, clunk, roll. I shared this body with another soul. It went tap, tap, ping, ping, clunk, clunk, slide. A wiggle and a squiggle full of love inside, and a wiggle and a squiggle full of love outside. I just want to leave with celebrating life.
Yes, that's a beautiful song for us to finish up with. And I should add that Nadine is not your only child, right? We should remember to mention that there are other Dyskants.
Yes, they
around.
are. Fortunately, none of them got leukemia, for which I'm very grateful. My son, Ramy, lives in Seattle, and he's a wonderful young man, very exuberant. And my son, Eric, lives in D.C. with his lovely wife, and they're expecting a baby almost any minute. Its due date's March 12th. So it's going to be my first grandchild.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations on that. And our hour is filled up. So what I would like to say to the audience is thank you for attending. I hope that maybe this has not only inspired you with respect to caregiving, but maybe inspired you to attend some of our ANCAN groups. We have a group for caregivers. That group, by the way, has two different flavored meetings. One, we talk about grief, and the other we do not. We welcome everybody to any meeting, but we keep the grief and the bereavement separate in case caregivers who are still looking after their loved ones don't want to consider the grief and the bereavement. So we respect that. And then, of course, we have all our prostate cancer groups, of which Barbara and Barry were part. Before I go, I want to remind you definitely to be very respectful and generous towards the Marsh tip jar. We thank you for that. And I'd also like to remind you that next month We will be talking to Twinkle Burke, who has used the performing arts to help her with dealing with miscarriages and her mental state as a result of miscarriages. So with that, I hand it back to Brianna. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.